Excited to move in with Mary?
Yeah.
Will you come home if I miss you?
Maybe.
Hello everyone and welcome. Today we are talking about the book Becoming Sister Wives. We are in part 3 of the book, which is titled Family, and in chapter 9, which is written by Meri Brown. Mary's chapter about family starts with finances and autonomy. She talks about how simple money was when she first married Cody. They shared one bank account. All of the money would go into it. They would talk about what needed to be paid. She was the one responsible for paying the bills, and then if they had any extra money, which they usually didn't, but if they did, they would agree on where to spend that extra money. This system worked well for them, and so when Janelle entered the family, they just continued on with that. They had her put her money into that account, and then they talked about what bills needed paid, and Meri was the one that would pay them. If there was any extra money, they would agree on how it would be spent. Now, that still continues to sound really simple, but things are definitely a lot different when there's a third person, and specifically when it's Meri and Janelle. We know they don't have or didn't have a very good relationship during those early years, and having Meri control the money and pay the bills left Janelle feeling like Meri was the one who had all of the control of the finances. Because they were sharing one account, that meant when Janelle wanted to make a purchase, she had to discuss it with Meri. And I'm sure if you've listened to the other chapters, you can tell that probably wasn't a good idea, and it probably wasn't something that Janelle really wanted to do. Janelle is open about the fact that she avoids confrontation, and Meri is honest about the fact that she is very assertive and is very particular about things. So I could see Janelle feeling like Meri had all of the control. And I could also see Janelle trying to avoid having conversations with Meri about money. Meri doesn't actually recall when they decided they needed to get separate accounts, but it did eventually happen, and she says this really helped all of them. After this, all of the sister wives always kept separate bank accounts. Meri says that this has helped each one of them have their own autonomy, including Cody. It no longer matters what the other people think of their small purchases. Meri makes a point of mentioning here that a lot of things change in their family. They're always evolving to do what works the best for them. And the bank accounts weren't the only way that their finances changed. As the family grew, they had to make decisions about who would pay for what and how to handle the division of money. At the time of writing the book, Meri says that they divide the bills according to income. She says that each adult in the family takes ownership of one of the bills. It could be the mortgage, the cell phone, or the car payment. It doesn't matter whose name is on it, but that wife would be responsible for making sure that bill is paid. I'm just going to be honest with you guys, when it comes to their work situations and their finances, I cannot wrap my head around it because I know some people worked part-time, some people didn't work at all. I don't really understand how they divided up money, but Meri mentioned it and I wanted to be sure I mentioned it here in this video as well. Even though they're all supposed to take ownership of a bill, that doesn't mean they're completely doing everything alone. When it comes to important stuff or when money is really tight, they will pull all of their money together. And Meri gives an example of this. She says there was a time that the transmission went out in her car and she didn't have the money to fix it. So they all pulled their money together to get it fixed because it was important that Meri had a working vehicle. They also pull their money together when they need to get through tough times due to Cody's job. You have to remember that Cody has often worked as a salesman, and that means sometimes he gets paid commission. So they have good months and they have bad ones. She says that during the bad times, they need to pull their money together to cover the mortgage. And when Cody has a good month, they're able to catch up on other bills, or they'll go and do something fun with the kids. Meri makes a point of mentioning that now that they all live in separate houses, things are a lot more different. She says they are more independent from one another, and they each look after their own kids and their own homes and their own businesses, and they do it all separately. But she does say that it's still important that they feel like they're one family. So Meri moves from finances to talking about what it's like to raise children with other sister wives. It's important to remember that this chapter is focused on family, and she's going to talk a lot about how the family changed throughout the years. She says that they're living separate now and they're living more independently from one another, but that wasn't always the case. There was a time when they were all living together and Janelle was working full-time, Christine was working part-time, and she was the stay-at-home mom. I think it's easy to sometimes forget that Meri played a role in the parenting because we think of Christine as that main stay-at-home mom. But according to Meri in this chapter, there were times that she either didn't work at all or only worked part-time so that she could help stay home and take care of the kids. When it comes to parenting, Meri is pretty straightforward about what kind of person she is. She likes to have things done in a certain way. She likes order and quiet. And she also has a very clear idea about discipline. She says it's important to her that the kids grow up showing respect to people and things. She wanted the kids to play nicely and to get along, and she expected them to be obedient. Now, I'm going to read a part directly from the book. Meri says, "I'm the type of mom who doesn't allow jumping on furniture. I know I've not always been looked too highly upon by some of my sister wives because this makes me seem too strict, but my furniture has definitely outlived some of theirs." She says there was a time that it wasn't just the other sister wives who had an issue with her strictness, but it was also Cody. He tried to get her to lighten up about the furniture, and he told her that her house didn't need to look like a museum. But she says he gradually changed his mind as he realized that her furniture was actually lasting longer. With that being said, Meri admits that she has had to learn to relax. She still wants the kids to respect her and her space, but she says she's a lot more patient than she used to be when it comes to them running around her home. Meri brings up this story about a time they were living in northern Wyoming, and during those years they all lived separate. Meri and Christine had their homes out in the country on 2.5 acres, and Janelle lived in town. She would bring the kids over to Christine and Meri every day when she went to work. Meri and Christine were each working part-time, and they adjusted their schedules so that someone would always be home with the kids. Meri said this was a really good time for their family. They each had their own space, but they were still close enough together for the kids to run around and play outside in the yard together and still be really close. When you're reading this book and when you're watching the show, you realize that they're the happiest when they're separate. That's sort of what you hear over and over. You know, Christine and Meri were happy when they were neighbors. Janelle was happy when she had her own space. Everyone's happier when they're separate. And in the book, it's, they're trying to make it sound like this shows how polygamy can work. But for me, it's almost like proof that polygamy doesn't really work that well. But I'm going to keep going. You guys can let me know what you think in the comments. Since we're talking about parenting, it only makes sense that we're going to talk about how they discipline their kids. Meri brings up the fact that each mom is very different. She says there was a time that Christine had disciplined Leon, and even though she agreed that Leon should have been disciplined, she didn't agree with the way that Christine did it. She said she went to Christine and discussed it, and Christine was very respectful of how she felt. Meri said when the kids were young and she would discipline them, she tried to make sure that the discipline matched what they had done. And she gave some examples. She said that if a child would hit another kid with a toy, then that child wouldn't get to play with the toy anymore. She also said that she only disciplined the children if she thought that they would understand what they were being disciplined for and how they should change their behavior. But at the time of writing this book, Leon is older. And Meri says now she's taken a back seat when it comes to disciplining the kids and even parenting the other children. Meri realizes that each mother needs their own space when it comes to their kids, and not all of the moms agree on when discipline is needed. This is when Meri brings up something that actually happened on the show. Meri says that even though she stays out of parenting and disciplining the other kids now more than she used to, she'll still step in if there's something going on that she thinks is wrong. And she brings up how she thinks that the biological Brown children treated Robin's children differently when they first joined the family. And I'm sure some of you are going to remember this. It's season 3, episode 7. It's where Meri sort of starts yelling at the kids outside of a restaurant on their camping trip. So I'm going to put a clip in here of that scene so you guys can see it.
Guys, these are your brothers and sisters whether you like it or not. And you better start treating them like it. Don't give me that. I see it.
And I want to give a little more context, even though I think most of us probably remember that episode. What had happened was Brianna had started crying, and she said that Peyton had poked her in the eye. And during a confessional, the moms talk about how this has sort of became an issue, some of the older boys picking on Robin's girls. So Mary's really upset and getting on to them. We don't actually see it happen. I have no idea what happened. It's possible Brianna got her eye poked. I don't think anyone's lying here, but the issue becomes whether or not Meri should have done this. And she actually is standing there and asks for some backup from the other moms. And I'm going to put a clip in here of that.
I, for one, am tired of it. Just saying I'd like to have some backup from moms if anybody backs me up.
Meri said in the book that she did this because she felt like what was happening needed to stop. She wanted to tell them that they needed to show each other respect and treat each other like family. Meri said when she was talking, she realized that Janelle and Christine weren't saying anything. She would later find out this was because they didn't agree with how she handled it. I also want to throw in a clip of Christine talking during a confessional about this whole situation. So here's a clip of Christine.
To me, the timing was completely off on Meri talking to the kids and yelling at them and getting after them. So it's best to just let things slide.
So I want to stress something before the comment section starts up about this episode and this part of the book. No one actually says that Peyton didn't do it. Not that I'm aware of. Unless I just flat out missed something. Everyone seems to be like, okay, he did it. So the issue isn't should have he gotten in trouble. It's how and when should have it happened. I agree with Meri on the fact that it should have been dealt with immediately, but I don't think Meri did it correctly. In my opinion, there was no reason to be standing outside of a restaurant talking about how your family isn't blending together well. I think that's a private conversation that should have been done as a family separately. I think he should have just gotten in trouble for poking his sister's eye. So I agree with Meri on the timing of the discipline, but not actually how she is doing it. I disagree on doing it later like Christine would like, but I do think it should have just been a one-on-one thing. And that is what Christine says next. I'm going to put in another clip from that scene.
I would have preferred to just been able to talk to Peyton because I didn't know that anybody else was involved.
And that is where I agree with Christine. If it was just Peyton and Brianna, it should have been addressed with the two of them. There was no reason for this giant group conversation. If you want to call it a conversation, it was more like Meri yelling at the kids. There was no reason for that to happen outside of a restaurant. And specifically bringing up how they weren't treating Robin's kids like siblings. It just wasn't the time for all of that. So, I don't know. I mean, more than anything, what I wanted to show here and what I think Meri is talking about in the book is their parenting styles are very, very different when it comes to discipline. So in that scene on the show, Mary's asking the other moms to say something. She wants some backup, but it doesn't really go down like that. And in the book, Meri says that that's not how it should be. She says that it's important for all of them to be united, all of the parents, when it comes to discipline, because it becomes way too easy for the kids to realize they can play one parent against the other. The book then skips to talking about the kids dating. Meri says she doesn't think the kids should date until they're 16. She also says that the children should remain chaste and refrain from kissing until they find someone really special. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this part of the chapter, but it is interesting. Not so much because there's anything we didn't know, but more because of how much has changed for her family. This was before Leon had transitioned, and she talks about how Leon was going to remain committed to the faith and the plural lifestyle. So I want to be clear about something. When I'm talking about the changes and the relationships with Meri and Leon, I'm not at all talking about Leon transitioning. I feel like that's often just the first thing people go to. I'm actually talking about Meri. When you're reading this book, it's clear that Meri feels like she has got this perfect child. Even though if you asked her, I'm sure she would say that's not how she feels. You can definitely tell she thinks she's won the lottery when it comes to raising a kid that's going down the path she would like her child to go down. She says that Leon's going to follow through with the plural lifestyle and follow through with their faith and has high standards and is waiting to be intimate until marriage. And she actually, this is what Meri says in the book, and she's talking about the other kids in the family and Leon. She says, in a lot of ways, I feel as if I have it easier with her choices than some of my sister wives have with their children. So she thinks, this path that Leon is headed down is perfect. And what is interesting about it is now we see Meri leaving Cody. It just makes me wonder how Meri feels about that part of the book now. Would it have changed anything if Leon had followed that path and committed to the faith more and married into a plural family? Would have it changed things for Meri? I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it. You guys can let me know in the comments, but it is interesting to go back and sort of see what Meri is thinking at that time while she's raising a teenager. Meri does continue to talk about her home life with Leon. She says one of the things that is very different in her home from the other homes is that her and Leon are the only ones eating there. So they're able to eat the foods that they like. They don't focus on kid-friendly foods anymore. Meri says she no longer goes on the big family grocery trips with Christine and Janelle because they no longer eat the same ways. And that is really something I never think much about at all. It's hard enough to buy food when you have a small family, but imagine that many other adults and that many other kids and trying to buy things that everyone wants to eat. I imagine that's not a whole lot of fun. So I think Meri probably does have a bit of an upper hand when it comes to eating good food, compared to maybe Christine and Janelle when they have the smaller kids in the house. Now, Meri's honest about the fact that she is someone who likes specific things in certain ways. She says she likes the bananas to be a certain color and she'll only buy a certain type of lettuce. She doesn't like to ask the other wives to do her shopping for that reason. She says that they won't end up getting things the way that she likes them. She also says a lot of times Leon will go over and eat with the other families, so she just gets to eat by herself anyway, and she just eats whatever she wants. She says it's a general rule between all of the wives that if a kid is over at another parent's house, that kid can eat there, and there's an open door policy when it comes to meals and coming and going between their houses. I'm not going to detour here, but I remember some issues with Robin and the kids coming and going in her house. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not even going to go in that direction because this chapter is about Meri. Even though Meri finds herself alone sometimes for dinner, it's not all of the time because Robin and her children will often stop by for an impromptu visit and end up staying for dinner. She says that Aurora likes to stay over and they often will make pancakes. She says these visits with Robin are not something that need to be planned, but when it comes to seeing the whole family and everyone all together, that is something that does take planning, now that they're all living in separate houses. At the time of writing this book, Meri says that the family still comes together for Friday dinners and to spend time with each other on Sunday afternoons. She says it's hard for them all to get together, but the kids are still really close because they come and go as they please and spend plenty of time together. Madison, Aspen, and Leon are particularly close because they were all born within 3 to 4 months of each other. As for Meri being close to the other kids in the family, she says she is the closest to Isabel. I'm going to throw in a clip here from season 3 where they talk about Meri and Isabel.
I don't get along with my mom as much as I get along with Meri.
She's really very, very obedient and sweet to Meri. I know that Isabel respects Meri.
Meri says that their relationship is very natural and that her and Isabel just seem to click. Meri also says that her house provides a quiet place for the family. The kids from the other households are able to come there when they need to get away from the chaos of having so many siblings in their own home. And I'm sure that, that is a thing with Isabel because Truly was very little there. I'm sure she loved going over to Meri's house where it was quiet and she got, some one-on-one attention, and Leon was over there. It's just a different feeling when it's a quieter household. So I'm sure Isabel did like going over there, and it sounds like Meri and her just had a really good connection when she was little. Meri also says that she's close to Robin's son, Dayton, because they share the same birthday. There's a tradition in the Brown family that when a kid has a birthday, Cody will take that kid and their mom out for a birthday date. But with Dayton, there's an additional tradition, and that is Meri and Dayton make plans to do something special together. When I first read that, I was like, that is so sweet. But then when I started thinking about the future of the family, I started to wonder how long it lasted. Like, how many years did they actually do that tradition? Dayton isn't the only child of Robin's that is brought up. Meri says that she has a strong connection with all of Robin's kids. She even says she found it easy to bond with Robin's unborn child, which was Solomon. She says that when Robin had her baby shower, if there were any duplicate items, all of those items were taken over to Meri's house, so there was baby stuff there. And all I kept thinking when I was reading this was how sad it really turned out for Meri, because she really, really wanted to have a strong connection with Robin and with Robin's children. And then in the end, Meri ended up just being sort of isolated by herself. It's really sad to think about. Meri does talk about how difficult it is with a large family for everyone to come together to attend school activities and events for the kids. She says she tries hard to attend stuff. She tried to attend Hunter's football games as much as possible because she really enjoyed them. But she does say in the book during the last season, she could only get to one of his games. But she says she understands that it's difficult for everyone to show up for everything. But they do try to make sure that at least some of the family is there. With that being said, Meri brings up a time where Leon had a school choir concert and only Cody and her attended. Meri said she wished that more people would have been able to be there, but she understands that things don't always work out. She mentions that sometimes moms need to run errands, go to other events, or just need to take a break. But I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't think that's actually how Meri feels. I think, like a lot of things that are brought up in this book and brought up on the show, I think she was trying to minimize how she felt, but I think she was upset enough that it got brought up in the book. That's my theory. I don't think there needed to be an example of a time when they couldn't attend something for another kid. I think that's life. Like, that's just how life is. But Meri has this specific story because I think, and this again, just my opinion, I think it really upset her and it was a bigger deal than they're letting on in the book. That's just how I feel, though. If you've read the book and you got to that part, you can let me know what you thought, because I would really like to know if anyone else feels the same way. Like, they're minimizing certain things in the book. Certain stories were bigger than they're letting on. I think Meri was really upset that no one attended. And again, I can see why. Like, if you attend tons of things for other children and then your child has something and no one shows up, I can understand being upset about that. Now, when it comes to the adults spending time together, Meri says she wishes that there was more of it. She says they try to get together for lunch when the kids are at school, but she wishes they were able to do it more. And as we approach the end of the chapter, Meri talks about being an empty nester. She says that soon Leon will be leaving the house and she'll have to figure out who she is again. Meri mentions that she talks to Robin about this, and Robin responds by saying, "You still have kids, Meri. You still have kids." Of course, I have a clip to put in here when it comes to that.
It's just Meri and Mariah a lot of the time. And Mariah's out doing her thing. She'll be leaving home in a couple of years. My little evil plan, I guess you'd say, is to keep Meri, busy with my kids. So.
I don't know why that annoys me, but it does. It really annoys me that Robin always seems to be encouraging Meri to stick around and stay where things aren't really working for her. And that's just what I feel like she's doing there. Meri is saying she's wondering what life's going to be like when Leon is gone, and Robin's saying, "You're still a mom, you still have kids." We see how that turned out. That's not at all how it turned out, but Robin's always doing that. It sort of gets on my nerves, that's all. Again, you guys can let me know what you think in the comments. Now, Meri wraps up the chapter by talking about what options she has for the next part of her life. She says she can go back to school and work toward the goal of working with at-risk youth. The second option is that she can pursue one of the family businesses and then travel with friends and family to new places. And then the third option is to become a mother again and take Robin up on her offer to act as a surrogate. And that is the end of the chapter. Now, you know, Meri really did follow through with some of that. She ended up creating her own business and traveling around and spending time with friends. I think it took her a while to get it right, but she did end up picking one of those and going through with it. It just wasn't as quickly as she might have thought it was going to happen. It was a bit more slow, and I think there were times it was painful, but I think Meri's getting to a really good place in her life. And I don't think there's anything about this chapter that really surprised me, aside from how much the family has changed. You guys can let me know down in the comments what you thought about this chapter and what you think of what Meri has said. I look forward to reading all of your comments. If you haven't already, I hope you'll click like and subscribe and come back to Happily Ever Reality. Our next chapter will be chapter 10, written by Janelle. And again, we're in part 3 of the book, so we'll be talking about family.